Hello everyone, it's Fight here, and today I'll be showcasing my Terrier 1 deck profile, and it's another really fun green deck to me just because you're able to kind of control the opponent's board with the likes of Rapidmon being able to DP minus, and it being really sticky, of course, with having Armor Forge, and of course using Rapid X and Mega Go Raise is just a really nasty combo for your opponent. And again, as usual, I'll be showcasing my deck profile on the free Hong Zero DCGO simulator. So if you want to find out what it is, you can go look on his channel to find out. And now, of course, let's just get into the deck profile. So of course, with the Digi Eggs, I like to run full Gummymon from the Star deck. And the main reason is just because I really do like the card draw, and since I also really do want to have at least one tamer out, that mostly being Willis, it's kind of a good thing in my mind just because I feel you're almost guaranteed the card draw. But again, I can see why you may not run it for something else, as I'll probably explain later, but I still really like the Gummymon. Then I like to run 2 copies of the BT16 Terriermon, and I think it's a pretty good sorcerer just because it looks at top 5 to basically grab any of your later stages. And my only 2 real complaints is that it doesn't grab Willis, which kind of sucks just because it was in the same set as Willis, and the fact that it doesn't have an inherit. But other than that, it's still a really good soldier for Terriermon, and I'll probably go over like some other stuff you could use later on to replace this one, but again, I still think that this is a really solid choice. Then I run 4 copies of the new BT16 Rapidmon X, and I think this is really good just because you're able to reduce your evolution cost, and in a lot of cases you are able to at least go in to your, say, Rapidmon level 4 for at least 2 costs with this, and I find that amazing. And even if you do use Gargomon, which in my case I do, you're able to at least go for 1 or 0 depending on how much Willises you have out. And again, it's just a fantastic card, and it also gives piercing to your higher stages, which again is just fantastic for the fact that you do end up suspending a lot of your opponent's bodies. And overall, you really do want to see this as a fall, and again, I absolutely love it. I'm going to go over the last 2 rookies together, and one of the ones I also like to at least run at least 2 of is the EX2 Terriermon, just because say if you do have it out, you're able to at least play a tamer and gain back some memory, and it really works with the Star deck Terriermon, which I also like to run at 4 of, just because if you reduce the cost of a tamer by 2, you're able to gain 1 back with this, and I just really like that combo. And even with the EX2 Terriermon, you're able to get a plus 2k buff if you suspend something, which is really nice. And of course, this Terriermon is just fantastic for cheating out tamers really cheap, along with having the all tones of gaining 1 plus DP, which again I just think is one of the best rookies we've ever gotten for green, and it's super generic, and I just again absolutely love the card. I like to run just 2 of the Star deck Gargomon just because it's not as important as say my level 4 Rapids, but it still can come up just because with this one you're able to get jamming really easily, just because when you swing you just give it jamming, and I find that still pretty amazing just for that alone. And the inherit is again similar to the Terriermon inherit, and again, just because it copies it doesn't really make it bad. The 1k buff can come up a lot, and it really makes a lot of your bodies just harder to swing over, along with the fact that like say if they want to use heavens or just some other DP minus stuff, having your body suspended really helps with that. And again, overall, just a really solid card. I just like the Rapids we have right now in level 4 slot in comparison. And of course, these next 2 level 4s are again one of your main hitters for the deck, and it's funny to say that as level 4, but it's the BT8 Rapid along with the Star deck 17 Rapid. These 2 I think are just phenomenal cards in general. This one, it kind of stacks with the more tamers you have, but it's still really solid just because again it suspends basically anything, along with minusing 5k to up to 3 guys, which this also helps against bigger stack decks, along with like more wide decks, just because you're able to kind of just make them weaker, so that way you can use this or another Digimon to swing over them. And again, paired up with the Rapidmon X along with Willis really helps this card shine. And then with this one, again, it's really good just because this one also does have blocker, so it makes it a bigger threat, say if you just leave it suspended, and it's an absolute phenomenal card. Again, really good for the deck, along with the fact that it being able to give minus 4k to security really is helpful just because it can make it survive a little bit longer. And again, well paired up with a different Digi Egg I'm going to talk about later, again it just makes this guy really hard to kill. And at least this one does have an inherit similar to the Terriermon, which again is just fantastic for the deck, as I keep saying. And in this case, I only run 4 level 5s, and that of course being the starter deck Rapidmon. And this one is again one of the best cards I think ever printed in green, just because of the fact that it's not only a Digivolve, it also gives protection from deletion and bomb deck and bounce to hand, which again a lot of cases it just makes it really hard for the opponent to deal with, just because it makes it really sticky. And while you can DP minus it, again some decks can do it really easily, some decks can't, but overall generally really fantastic card, and I really do like it's also on play too. And the old tones really helps out, just because you can pair this up with piercing to kind of get like multiple damage in, and I just really love it for that. And these next two megas are clearly one of the biggest parts of why I really love the deck, and that definitely has to be 4 copies of the Rapidmon X along with 4 copies of Mega Gargomon Ace. The Rapidmon X, it kind of sucks that it's a secret, but I completely understand why, just because it does a lot. Not only can it kind of mess with really wide boards, it can also soften them up, just because of the all tones while you have Rapid or X Anti, the board gets minus 4k if they're suspended, which combined with the when Digivolving can really just mess up the opponent's day, and I just love it for that. And you're able to gain back memory from it, and again that's just really solid overall, and can make you kind of push for game and just do a lot of damage to the opponent's board. And the Mega Gargomon Ace is also really effective, just because it also can actually go from this one, which is really funny, and the fact that it can kind of lock down Digimon and Tamers, which really helps you stall out just in case if you can go for game, which is really good. And since these two go off any Rapidmons, and since I run like about 12 Rapidmons, you basically threaten these two at any point of the game, and just fantastic, and also really scary when you're actually going against these decks. And of course I like to run 4 Willis, just because I think it's really effective on just helping you reduce your cost even further in combination with say the Digimon X, but even in general it just really is good like that. And I really do like that 3 cost, because that way it's really cheap, and especially if you play off the Star Deck Terrier, you're able to just play it for 1, and again if you combo it off with the X2, that's basically a free Tamo. And it's kind of like a mini Mimi in a way, where it just hatches a Didier, so you're able to kind of combo off with that and kind of just have a second stack in the back just in case. And speaking of Mimi, I like to run 2 of it, and this can definitely help push for aggression, just because when you do have your level 5 out, which by the time like I believe if you want to like turn 3 or 4, it's really easy just to get Mimi's effect off, so you can kind of just help cycle through your deck, along with being able to just put rookies in the back and just help push for aggression that way. Now moving on to the removal options, and I just like to run 1 Giant Missile along with 1 Heaven's Judgment. This is mostly just because say if I'm facing a deck that can't be DP reduced, I'm able to do this, and if I'm able to get like enough colors on board, obviously I can just do this as well. And I think both of them are good, and if you really wanted to, you could cut one of them for the other, so you can run say Heaven's Judgment at 2 or Giant Missile at 2. Both of them are still really solid options, so I can see you going either way, but I just like to run at 1 of 1 just in case, if depending on the situation. Now moving on to some search options, and I just like to do 3 of the Double Typhoon along with 3 Training. And I think Double Typhoon is still really good, especially in this deck, just because you do have a lot of Terrier wands, so that way you could just free play them. I think the only thing that does kind of suck is that you can't free play Terriermon X, but since you already have so much other Terriers exact in name, it's still really good like that. And again, it's just a really powerful option just to be able to grab a lot of pieces for the deck. And Training is just here because again, it's just training 2-cost Soldier for basically any green card is just fantastic, and you really want to see your pieces, so I just chose to run this. And I guess if you really want to, again, you could just run Boost, but Training is still fantastic regardless of that. And I like to run just 2 of the Sparkle of Fate option, just because I'm able to go into any Rapidmon from any of my Gargo or Rapids, and I think it's kind of useful, especially in the mirror, or say if you're playing something like Numamon, because they can't reduce the DP of that stack, which I think can kind of come up, just because again it doesn't really go through Armor Purge, and that kind of sucks. So if they just DP minus your Rapid X, it is what it is, and I think this can kind of help it keep it safe for a turn, especially again if you're fighting the decks I mentioned. And the security effect can be kind of useful, just because you're able to play a Terriermon for free which I can imagine is kind of helpful just because you can play it from hand to trash. So that either gives you a body from your hand or just from trash if it's like early or late game, because you could just swing with one, have it die, and then say if you somehow get this in security, oh look, you get to free play it, which might be able to come up, but again, that's not a super likely scenario, but still decent effect. And you of course add to hand, which of course that way you can use it for a later taunt. And for DigiEggs, you could run the BT2 Agumon since you do want to be suspended a lot. This way you're able to at least gain some memory back, and it could be kind of funny and useful in some cases, I think, because you also do get a lot of DP balls when you're suspended. So again, not the worst DigiEgg out there. And of course we have the EX2 Gummymon, and this does draw you one if the opponent's Digimon becomes suspended. So say if you don't want to swing because you're fear of an ace, you can at least try to suspend something and still get a draw. And 911 from EX5 I think is actually a pretty decent option. As I said before, if you pair this up with the Rapidmon from the Starter deck, you're able to get 9k with this or above. And I really like it just because it makes that Rapidmon harder to kill via security checks, and that's really good. And then I also have the BT16 Metamon. The only reason I decided to put this in here is because it's all turns. When a dual color Digimon deletes another in battle, you're able to gain a memory, and since a lot of your top end stuff is dual color, I thought it could be kind of a funny option to kind of mess with your opponent. And also with the later parts of the video going over like different tech options, I didn't put the DigiEggs, so now I'm kind of just playing them now. So if you notice a difference between the clips, that's kind of why. And I didn't want to redo all that talking just for this part. And now let's go over some cards you could possibly run on the deck. And one of them of course being Calling. I think it's pretty decent just because you could play it for one, and it again just draws you cards, gets you extra DP, and gains you memories, so it can help just do a lot of stuff for the deck simply just by evolving. And since you can do it for cheap in this deck, it's really good in that case. And of course we have Floodgate Terrier. Since you could free play it, it can help you in a pinch, and Floodgate's always nice. And I guess you could also run Palmemon in this case, but again, Terrier at least is on theme. And then we have Lotmon from the Starter deck, and this could come up just because you can get Alliance. So of course if you pair it up with Mega Gorgomon, you swing for 2 checks, unsuspend, and swing again for 2 checks. And again, I just like it, and if you want to put it in, I hope you can find space for it, but again, solid enough card for the deck if you really want to run it. And then of course we have the EX4 Terriermon, and this is a solid card just because again it's another Sorcerer, and in this case if you want to run more Henrys, you're able to grab that as well. And while the Inherit I can't imagine not really coming up all that much, it only would come up if you do decide to run the Star deck Lotmon, but again, still decent Sorcerer. And then we have the BT3 Gargomon, which I think is actually kind of decent, only because it's a 1 cost, and you get a plus 1k for all your opponents in the Digimon. And if you pair this up with your Rapidmon, you're able to at least get somewhat extra DP with that, and still okay card. But again, there are better level 4s you could run. I guess it's just maybe a budget option, or just if you can't find the other Rapidmons. And then we have EX2 Gargomon, and this one is kind of decent just because it's another way to reduce cost, and that's a similar inherit to the EX2 Terriermon, where you're able to get plus 2k if an opponent's Digimon becomes suspended. And that's pretty good just because, especially if you pair it up with the EX2 one, you can get like plus 4k, and then your Mega Gargo or whoever else is going to hit for the big damage. And again, that's pretty good. And I guess the only downside is 2 costs, but again, since you reduce so much in this deck, it's not the biggest deal. And again, overall solid Gargomon in my opinion. And on the same train of EX2, you could also run the EX2 Rapidmon. And while I think just running the Starter deck 1 at 4 is good enough, this one isn't the worst, especially because it's another way to suspend stuff, and you're able to get an extra security check if you do suspend something. So of course, if you have this in a stack, and say if you go into a Mega Gargomon, you're able to at least get extra damage, and I think that's still pretty solid. And then for moving on to Tamers, you can also run the EX2 Henry. Well, the main reason you run it is just because it's an in-archetype memory setter, and say if you swing with any of your guys, you're able to suspend something. So just extra suspend stuff is kind of helpful in my eyes. So if you want to run it, you can replace it for like Mimi or something. And then I also think Tiger could actually be decent for the deck, just because of the fact that it gives a plus 1k to all of your Digimon, and the more DP the better. and it also is another way to reduce your higher evolutions, which again can be extremely helpful. And then of course there's the Star Deck Henry, and this is actually pretty decent just because it's similar to cards like Satsuki where you're able to gain a memory of your opponent's Digimon, and it basically is a warp into a Mega Gargomon. And it does kind of suck, it's just exactly Mega Gargomon, so you can't use like Black Mega Gargomon for example, but since you do have the ace, it's still pretty solid. And especially if you combo this with the double Typhoon, you could pretty much just warp into a Mega Gargomon and still be able to attack, which I find pretty effective as well. And if you want to run it again, you could. It's still a really decent tamer for the deck. And I put the pod plugin only because you do run a lot of yellow, and I thought it would be funny because you're able to kind of give something minus 6k, and they can't activate when Digivolving effects, so it's kind of like a mini Venusmon. And while you could use it, even if you just have a Tamer, regardless, I think it's a funny enough option. And then that way, if you do also hit insecurity, you add it to your hand, so, you know, Magnet X players beware. Then of course, just you could run the standard boost instead of running training, just because again, trainings are expensive somewhat. And again, another removal option I still really love is Grand of Soul, just because you're able to bomb deck almost any suspended Digimon, which can be kind of nice. And the next two I think are actually really funny text for the deck, that being the original X Anti option along with Protoform. X Anti you could use to just swing with your Rapidmon to go into the Rapid X, which is really good. And if you're say somehow facing a deck that likes to strip stuff, this cannot be touched, which is really useful. And then of course Protoform is able to give your stuff back, at least one of your pieces, and put this in security. So say if you get DP minus, you're able to, you know, grab one of the pieces from your sources and then put this on top. And I think that's very helpful just in case if you run into stuff like that. And I know Protoform is kind of expensive, but again, it's just suggested, and if you can't get it, then simply just don't run it in the deck and just put in, like, you know, again, the Sparkle of Fate or any other option that you enjoy using. And this pretty much is my current deck list for Terriermon. And again, it's a really fun deck, and it's really good in terms of the control element, along with being really offensive, just because your Rapidmons are really sticky, along with having the Mega Gargoyle be able to restand and just do a lot of damage. And I really want to know your guys' thoughts on my deck list, along with commenting what does your list look like and what options do you like running to kind of like go against some other decks. Let me know in the comments below. And again, thank you all for staying to the end. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and tune into my later content. And if you guys want, of course, watch my other one. And again, thanks again, and see you guys later.